The recession was tough, but it looks like the recovery is going to be even harder.
Rising taxes, rising prices, and who knows when interest rates are going to go up again. It's going to make our addiction to borrowing and spending very expensive to maintain.
So what's the best way to manage our money? Tonight we'll try to show you how to beat tough times.
Spending it, Martin Lewis shows the Money Watch family how they can save thousands on household bills.
It's crazy that we could be wasting that much money. Credit cards. We reveal the catches that could cost us dear.
I hardly ever look at the small print.
Could there be shocks ahead for home buyers?
There's nowhere for people like me to go.
Why going bust doesn't have to mean a life sentence.
What it did for me was made me aware of money, and it made me aware of how to deal with the money.
And how to live with no money at all.
Hello and welcome to Money Watch. This week we're in Liverpool, where billions of pounds have been invested in recent years in new retail and housing developments. But Liverpool also has the lowest employment rate of any city in the country.
The government's big squeeze is already underway. So what difference will it make to the way people here and across the UK spend and borrow?
For many of us, the biggest and most important outgoing we have each month is our mortgage. About 19 million people in the UK have mortgages, and added together, the monthly repayments are around £6 billion.
In the recession, the bank rate dropped to its lowest level for 400 years. Suddenly, millions of people had more money in their pockets, so repaying that debt became a lot easier. But what happens when rates go up again? Andy Verity reports.
In Rhyl in North Wales, the Humphreys family are off shopping.
Oh, look at the caravan.
They're searching for the perfect touring caravan.
Which bed would you sleep in? That bunk bed there?
And what was the stroke of luck that made this possible?
Come on, you coming out?
It's all down to their mortgage.
That's quite interesting, isn't it?
Living in a caravan and extra tap as well.
Cutting interest rates to record lows and holding them there for nearly 2 years has thrust unprecedented amounts of cash into many mortgage holders' hands, bailing out the overstretched and handing big windfalls to others who've got far more disposable income. The danger is they get used to it. Hello, are you Tony?
For now, Tony and Alice and their 2 children, Maya and George, are relishing a financial boost they hadn't expected. They bought this house 4 years ago, and their monthly payments were well within budget.
The mortgage at the time was £270.
270 quid?
Yeah.
And that was back in 2006?
That was right, yeah.
Did it get easier or harder after that?
No, it got harder. Our payments went up to £458.
458, so your payments are nearly doubling there. How did that happen?
It's a tracker mortgage, so our payment was based on the base rate. It's the base rate plus a little bit.
I see, so when the base rate dropped, I guess your tracker mortgage must have gone down.
It did, it followed it. Right the way down to £58 a month.
£58?
£58.
So they went from 458?
Absolutely.
So they went way down, and you're saving 400 quid?
Absolutely.
You must have been smiling a week.
Yes, so was absolutely.
You getting in then?
Good girl.
Since rates dropped, the Humphreys family have saved £6,000. Instead of paying down their mortgage, they've decided to buy their dream caravan. And they've invited me to go shopping with them.
So would you like to live in one of these?
Yeah. This is one how I am.
We particularly like the
separate bedroom for the kids.
bedroom at the back.
Oh, the toilet's under the sink.
Toilet's underneath the sink.
So you have to put the sink up.
To go to the toilet.
Maya,
Maya?
Can you imagine sleeping here?
Yeah, come on, can she lie down, shall we? There we go. Nighty-night.
Tracker mortgages haven't just helped ordinary borrowers. All over the country, they've rescued the seriously overstretched, like here in Dorset.
The thing about these record low interest rates is that they've helped most those who've borrowed the most. And often that means ordinary people on ordinary incomes who've borrowed extraordinary amounts to buy dozens of properties and create buy-to-let empires in towns from Aberdeen to Bournemouth.
One of these is Mark Taylor. By trade, he's a clockmaker, but 10 years ago, he started buying property in the hope that his investments might one day fund his retirement.
Give me an idea of how you did this.
Right, what we get is my 15% deposit. There we go. The lender says, OK then.
I'll chuck in the sand for the mortgage.
Yeah, that's right, there's the other 85%, thank you very much. And there's the property. Brilliant, OK. 2 or 3 months down the line, you think, hang on a minute. Look at
the price has gone up.
It's grown. Right, we can release some of that equity in there. I've got another 15% deposit here. Will you lend me another 85% to buy another property? And it goes on like that. And the more you buy, it accelerates.
So how many properties did he buy?
Well, eventually we ended up with about 100.
100 properties?
Yes.
How much money did you borrow to get that?
Oh, in the region of £5.5 million.
£5.5 million? And your income is how much?
20,000 a year.
With a buy-to-let empire that stretched across the UK, Mark's business has had its ups and downs. In 2008, he was losing money because some of his rents weren't being paid. Then, the Bank of England came to his rescue.
Fortunately, with the reduction, a huge reduction in the interest rates, saved our bacon. And it allowed us to sort of just sit back, take a deep breath and look at things again.
What happened to your payments?
Just in time, they tumbled and allowed us to just keep the pot bubbling, keep everything just simmering over.
Mark is by no means the only overstretched borrower to be helped by tracker mortgage rates hitting rock bottom. But for how long can they stay this low? To get an answer to that, you need what you might call a clear-sighted overview of the mortgage market.
People, I think, are in cloud cuckoo land if they believe that whatever they're paying on their mortgages just now will always be the case.
Jonathan Davis believes the future could hold a severe shock for hundreds of thousands of overstretched borrowers who took out discounted introductory offers before the banking crisis struck. Often, these deals have time limits, and when they end, homeowners could see their payments soar.
They're going to find their mortgage costs going up 2 or 3 times what they've recently been paying.
I see. So people who've had those introductory rates and are coming off them are going to see their costs going up substantially.
It's happening right now, and it will continue to happen in the future.
And that's exactly what's happening to the clockmaker Mark Taylor in Bournemouth. His miraculously low tracker mortgage deals are running out.
We were paying 0.54%.
Amazing deal.
Absolutely fantastic. We were happy with that. What we didn't expect was it to go up at a stroke to 4.79%.
So you were paying what?
The monthly repayments were £23.80, but that same amount we borrowed now incurs a monthly charge of £209.80.
So 10 times as much.
Well, it's 1,000%, 10 times what they were on the introductory offer.
Like many homeowners, Mark is trapped on his bank's standard variable rates. He can't renegotiate his mortgages because he doesn't have enough equity in his houses.
So your exits from it are blocked on all sides. You can't remortgage either?
No, there's nowhere for people like me to go.
For Mark and millions of other borrowers, the best they can hope for is that interest rates stay low. Lenders have been pushing up some of their mortgage rates, even without a rise from the Bank of England. When the bank does raise its rates, they'll go up again.
We call it short-term savings, which is just for...
And that makes me worry about the Humphreys family, who were planning to use their tracker mortgage savings to buy a caravan. But since we first spoke, they've decided to put their family's financial security first. They're keeping their savings The kids will have to wait for their caravan.
We've got to think about the future, and we've got to make sure they've still got a roof over their head.
So whatever fun they might now have in the caravan has got to be offset against the security.
Absolutely.
Yeah, security's paramount.
Yeah.
Their caution makes sense. Economists predict that by early next year, rates will have started to rise. Counting on them to stay down is like praying for the tide not to turn.
Personal finance journalist Paul Lewis and Oxford economist Linda Yueh are with me now. We just saw there Tony and Alice, they're worried about the interest rate going up again. They put their plans for a caravan on hold. Are they right to be worried?
Yes, and they're doing exactly the right thing. If you're saving £400 a month on your mortgage, as they were, the temptation is to go out and spend it. And they had that temptation and they resisted it. Good for them. But I'm afraid a lot of people are not doing that. You should be saving that money or paying down your mortgage.
Linda, just put all this in context. After the last two recessions in the early 80s and in the 90s, how high did the interest rate go?
In the early 80s, it hit as high as 15%. In the early 90s, as high as 10%. Now, we are unlikely to see interest rates rise that quickly because after those two recessions, the recovery was characterized by high inflation. And high inflation is what causes the Bank of England, who sets the interest rate, to raise it.
So we're not going to see the interest rate go to 15% again, are we?
No, we're not. But if you take the average interest rate over the last 20 years, that was about 6%. And I think you have to consider that to be the norm. So at the moment, 0.5% is just unusually low.
So, Paul, when do you think that the interest rate will start to rise again?
Well, I suspect it'll go up by the end of the year. I think that inflation is a worry. Some members of the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee are worried about inflation. I'm certainly very worried about it looking at the budget papers, and I think that will be the pressure to put up rates. So I would say they'll start by the end of the year. How far they'll go, I don't know. I hope Linda's right and they won't go up as high as we've seen in the past.
So, Paul, what should people be doing to prepare for that?
Well, the first thing is look at your mortgage. A lot of people don't know what sort of mortgage they've got. What is their commitment? If rates rise 1, 2, 3, 4%, could you afford it? And on an average mortgage of £150,000, a rate rise of 4% is going to mean about £500 a month more on your mortgage. That's a lot of money.
So it could be a real shock. Paul, Linda, thank you. Justin.
Well, we know for sure when one rate is going to rise. VAT is going up to 20% from January the 4th next year. So what effect will that have on your weekly shop? That's what I've been trying to find out here in Liverpool. Here's a quiz for you. Do you know which items you pay VAT on and which you don't? I've got a selection of ordinary products here. Let's see how people get on. Two items that look very similar. Which one do you think you pay VAT on? Potato crisps and corn chips.
Yes, no. You pay it on corn, I think.
Can you pay it on corn? You pay it on potato. Milkshakes or orange squash?
Milkshakes. Milkshake.
The chocolate stuff.
No.
No.
Pay VAT on that. Flapjacks or muesli bars?
Flapjacks.
Muesli bars. The Treasury says that items which are regarded as essentials, like a lot of food and children's clothing, are typically VAT-free, whereas non-essentials are taxable. But of course, it's not that simple. So what about the magazine or the toilet paper? Which would you pay VAT on? The magazine? The toilet paper or the magazine?
Okay, magazine.
VAT on the magazine.
That's what you'd expect, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the one you pay VAT on. Children's hats or children's visors, and where's the scrunchie? We've got a scrunchie somewhere. There.
Oh, no, you don't, because children, you don't pay stuff on children's stuff, do you?
Except some things. You pay VAT on the scrunchie and the visor, but you don't pay it on the hat, because the hat covers the whole of the head.
They don't know VAT from their VAT.
VAT from the hat.
Our experiment shows just how hard it is to work out which items you pay VAT on. So the sad truth is that come January the 4th next year, we're all likely to start paying significantly more in tax. How much do you think the increase in VAT is going to cost the average family?
It's hard to say.
So I should imagine it's going to be 100 quid or so, more. I've not got a clue. Not got a clue.
425 quid a year, they reckon.
Bloody hell.
So the cost of the weekly shop will definitely go up, but that's not where it stops. The VAT rise will put another £1.50 on the average tank of petrol, taking pump prices back to record highs. As Libby Potter reports, soaring fuel prices are already changing some people's lives, and the impact on the rest of us might be greater than we think.
This year, petrol prices hit an all-time high. Millions of motorists across Britain have been suffering. I'm on my way to meet a man who has been hit hard in the pocket and whose whole life is about to change. In his job as a piano teacher, Gary Walls has to drive 30,000 miles a year. But rising fuel prices mean he has to give up that job.
I'm going to retrain to do general primary school teaching instead of just music, which means I'll work at one school, I'll travel there and then I'll stay there the whole day. Cut out the travelling.
With petrol prices close to a record high, he's £80 a month worse off than he was last year. And he can't go on like this.
Well, over the years, I've put my prices up, and of course petrol goes up more than once a year. And I'm struggling to keep up, and there's only so far people will, accept the price of the piano lesson going up.
Gary has a family to support, and like all of us, he's facing a rise in VAT and fuel duty, which will hike up petrol prices even more. So even when he changes jobs, it's going to be hard.
We just have to make more and more cuts in all areas, clothing, food, be more careful where you shop. You basically got to leave no stone unturned to keep up.
Cutting back is something we are all going to have to get used to. Many experts believe the era of cheap oil is over, and that impacts on all areas of our lives, especially our basics. For multinational supermarkets and small shops alike, the price of food is inseparably linked to fuel costs.
Hi.
Hi, Libby.
Ian, yeah?
Nice
to meet you.
Good to have a look round.
Ian Wharton runs a farm with its own shop near Hexham in Northumberland. The rising price of oil has hit the farm hard. It costs more to run the tractors. Necessities like plastic sheeting, fertiliser and transport become more costly. Even in the farm kitchen, fuel use is intensive.
Fuel has a direct effect on everything that we sell.
Absolutely everything on this farm has a link to fuel.
Yes, everything is linked in some way or another to a litre of fuel.
Like many food retailers, they are now being forced to pass on their extra costs to the customer. It's a small, local example of how fuel prices affect our whole economy.
We will give as much value for money as we can, but there will be increases in what we produce this year. The same as everybody, I'm afraid.
In the longer term, we hope to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels using alternative technologies. But right now, with world demand for oil increasing and tax rises on the way, the price of fuel will have a growing impact on our household budgets.
So what does all this mean for our spending? Well, despite increases in fuel and other costs, consumer confidence had seemed to be holding up pretty well. Take a look at this line. Now, what this shows is people who didn't expect to have to cut back because of the economic environment. They didn't expect to cut back. Look what happens. Falls right down in the middle of 2008, but look at this, then it rises back up. So by the end of last year, it's almost at the pre-recession levels, and it holds pretty steady since then. But crucially, what the economists don't know is how the budget is going to affect that. But there is another factor to take into account. During the boom years, homeowners were able to spend to their heart's content by just taking out another mortgage. Look at this. 6 years ago, homeowners were giving themselves a 15% pay rise through equity withdrawal. But look what happens to the figures. It falls right down until now. That source of finance has almost completely vanished. So, post-budget and with a big squeeze on the way, what are we going to do with our cash? Well, before the crash, consumer spending was rising at about 2.5%. Last year, though, saw an unprecedented contraction. It fell by about 3.5%. So what happens next? Well, experts are saying it will probably continue to fall a bit, perhaps by 0.5% this year, and then next year will start to rise, perhaps by 1% by the end of next year.
Linda and Paul join me again. Linda, here we are in the middle of Liverpool city centre, loads of people out shopping. It doesn't feel like there's a problem with consumer confidence.
No, it doesn't. For those people who are lucky enough to have hung on to their jobs, even though their wages haven't risen, a lot of their expenses have gone down, predominantly because interest rates are so low. But it's not all good news. If we look behind me, there is a closed store, so this will be replicated up and down the country. So many businesses have had to shut down.
What is it that drives consumer confidence, though?
It's exactly as the term implies. It's our confidence about our incomes, about our wealth. So if you look ahead, normally during a recovery, you should feel more confident about your job and your income, but not really in this case because the public sector job cuts which are coming will affect 1 out of every 5 workers.
Paul, after last month's emergency budget, do you think that people really are starting to feel a lot more nervous?
Well, I think they are, and I think they should, because we know our income is going to go down, taxes are going up, we know taxes on things we buy are going up with the VAT rise, as we've been hearing. Fuel prices have risen, they're taking more of our money now than ever before. So we're going to have less to spend, and I think people are beginning to feel that. And as Linda said, it's confidence about what's going to happen, and we know there's going to be big job losses in the public sector, certainly a pay freeze in the public sector, and of course it's not just the people affected, it's their friends and relatives who see that happening and think, I might be next. So I think it will have an effect.
Thank you. Now, last week we met our Money Watch family. Like so many of us, they are worried that their spending is outstripping their income. It's the job of our money-saving expert, Martin Lewis, to try to help bring the family budget back into balance. He's made a start, but with tax and price rises on the way, there's a lot more to do. The Money Watch family is in a financial hole.
Is it my... No, I haven't had a go yet.
But here's a man who's trying to get them out of it. Martin Lewis is on his way to help.
Hello. I'm Marie. I'm Martin.
According to Martin's budget planner, Graham and Anne-Marie Merriman are overspending by more than £3,000 a year.
It's not good because it's £3,000.
Measures in last month's budget could make things worse in the future. Last week, Martin made some suggestions on how to boost their income.
The best idea was renting out our garage.
I think using eBay as a way of generating extra revenue, I think is a really good idea.
I didn't like the idea of me going back to work.
Martin's next step is to focus on cutting their bills without cutting back.
Hiya.
Oh, hi, come in.
First up, how about trying cheaper food brands?
I have a challenge I call the Downshift Challenge, which is just about trying one level down of everything you buy. Did I play?
Yeah.
Martin's trying out taste tests on all kinds of food, including the family's favourite biscuits, McVitie's, which cost £2.89.
I think B, for me, was the nicer one.
Let's reveal B, which is Graham's favourite, which is the Sainsbury's Jaffa Cake, which is £1.25 for 36, so way less than half the price.
Yeah.
And Anne-Marie's favourite?
Sainsbury's Basic.
Which is 89p.
Oh, my cheap wife.
You roughly save a third on your shopping trolley if you drop one brand level on everything.
The key is you only make changes when you can't tell the difference. For most people, that's on half the food they buy. That would save the Merrimans £1,000 a year.
Amazing.
So already that would sort out a third of their £3,000 deficit. Next, it's energy bills.
Who do you use and when did you last switch?
I've never switched.
Right.
Ow, ow.
Look, never ever switched?
No.
Never?
No.
How long have you been here?
Oh, we've been here 3 years, but I've been the same supplier in my old place for, probably 10 years.
OK, right. So put the details in.
Martin's tip is to use an online comparison website to shop around for the best deals. But how much can the Merrimans save?
Lots of green.
Dad, could you read that number out for me?
£407 annual...
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
The man who has never switched before, he is surprised.
Man, I'm a mug.
It's crazy that we could be wasting that much money.
It's the same pipes, the same gas, the same electricity, the same safety. All that changes is who sends you a bill in the customer service when you call them up. That's it.
With just 2 of his money-saving tips, Martin could already halve their overspend. He's got more help for them later on. Meanwhile, Martin's meeting Christina, Anne-Marie's sister. She wants to clear her £24,000 student loan before getting a mortgage.
Hello.
Hello.
But according to Martin, she should think again, as student loan interest charges are based on last year's inflation rate.
Let's say you buy these baked beans. And over the next 10 years, their price rises. Well, at the same time, the cost of your student loan will rise exactly in parallel. No more, no less. Which means, if you borrow a shopping trolley's worth of goods, how much do you have to repay, whether it's in 2 years, 5 years or 10 years?
It would be the same amount?
Yeah, the same amount of money that would buy a shopping trolley's worth of good, which means the real impact on your pocket is...
Nothing.
Until September, the interest rate on student loans is 0 because for a period last year, inflation was negative. So rather than pay off the loan, it makes more sense to put the money into a savings account and earn some interest.
So the money in a savings account is earning you more than the debt is costing you. It would be ridiculous until September to even contemplate paying it off because actually you're making a profit by having that debt, if you think about it.
So what about Christina's plans to get a mortgage?
Now, a mortgage rate could be about 5%, 5.5%, depending how much deposit you've got. But one thing I can guarantee you is over the long run, a mortgage is going to be more expensive than the student loan. If you are planning to get a mortgage in the near future, which you are, aren't you?
Yes, that's
right.
right.
I mean, you're doing that seriously?
Yeah, definitely.
Then you really shouldn't be paying off the student loan right now because you'd only have to borrow it back at a higher rate. It's as simple as that. Back to the lollies.
Yeah.
Back home, Martin's team is setting up a test for Anne-Marie and Graham. He's already shown them many ways to cut their bills without changing their lifestyle, but they still need to save. So he's looking at which of life's little luxuries they could sacrifice.
This is about what the two of you see as priorities. This is what we're going to do. Can you see the numbers down there?
Yep.
1 to 5. With 1 being the thing that most important, that you least want to give up or cut back on, and 5 being the thing that you don't care about. And between the two of you, I want you to decide the order. You ready?
Okay.
Off you go.
Right.
What's the number 1 priority?
Haircuts.
No,
Definitely haircuts.
I've got any hair. Haircuts.
Definitely.
There are some tough decisions to be made between presents for friends and family at £700 a year, donations to charities £120 a year, eating out £780, and holidays £1,000 a year.
I can't believe I'm doing this, but yeah, 5 for holidays.
Holidays look like they're on their way out, but then a last-minute change of mind. It's charity donations that get the chop.
What's important to me about this isn't the decision. There aren't any rights or wrong. It's the conversation. And actually, lots of people do this. As a family, you've never sat down and prioritised what's important to you and what's not.
But how far will all of Martin's money-saving tips go towards tackling the family's overspend?
Remember, your deficit
Yeah.
was £3,100.
Yeah.
If I add all those together, we get £2,850.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
That's a high five moment, if I don't say so myself.
Hold on, well, you can do that.
Martin Lewis is here now. Martin, useful suggestions for our Money Watch family. What about everybody else?
Look, the most important thing I can say is anything you spend money on, you can save money on. The most difficult part of my job isn't saving people the cash, it's persuading them they can save it on anything. Water bills. If there are more bedrooms in your house than people, then it's very likely you can save hundreds by switching to a water meter. Check it out. Not in Scotland, though. It isn't free there. Childcare. If you pay for childcare and you're a single person working more than 16 hours a week, or a couple both working more than 16 hours a week, and you're paid under £40,000 of family income, you may be eligible for childcare tax credit. The average payout on that is £3,500 a year. Small one, mobile phones. When you dial an 0800 number, it isn't free, even though it's an 0800 number. You pay. So there's a website called 0800 Buster that gives you another number to dial first that makes it free. Anything you spend money on, you can save money on. Never discount it.
Yeah, but you've got to put a lot of effort in, haven't you?
Yeah, but this is well paid. Take the Money Watch family. I saved them £3 in a day. Let's say they'd taken the day off work and then done half as well without me. They might have done much better than that. You never know. £1,500 a day. You would have to earn over £500,000 a year before it wasn't the best paid day of your year. If you earn over £500,000, forget me. Look after yourself. If you earn less than £500,000, take a day off to sort out your finances, a financial blitz, and then you'll be rocking.
Martin, thank you. We'll be hearing more from Martin later in the programme, but when it comes to debt, credit cards can often be very tempting to help make ends meet, but they can also get you into trouble. Debt charities have been inundated with calls for help from people who've signed up for cards, only to find out too late that they have eye-watering rates of interest. As Rajan Datta reports, it is often all in the small print.
Many of us simply don't understand the terms and conditions of the financial products we use. But is it our fault or the lender's fault? To get to the bottom of this, I've called in financial expert Claire Francis to design a fictional credit card. It looks brilliant, but it's actually a terrible deal, which could end up costing customers a lot of money.
On the face of it, this looks a great card. We're offering 0% for 13 months on purchases, which is the longest interest-free period you can get on purchases. Once that ends, you charge 11.9% annual percentage rate, which again is really competitive. So I think this card will appeal to a lot of people.
But the details are filled with pitfalls, which could catch customers out, and these hidden catches are all based on the small print of real current credit cards.
We've got things that are asterisks and are at the bottom. We've got a summary box on the back. So the information's there for people to read, but most people probably won't look at it.
OK, well, let's move away a small distance and see what unfolds.
Just like real credit card marketing, our fake salespeople are soon busy luring people in.
Hello, can I just use your new credit card?
We fill the shopping centre with hidden cameras. And pretty soon, lots of people begin signing up.
What is it that interests you most about the card?
So far, very few people have asked any questions at all about the small print.
Hiya, caramba!
And there are serious consequences to all this.
Good morning, Greenwich Money Advice.
Citizens Advice Bureau in England and Wales handle 45,000 inquiries every week from people with debt worries. Many of them haven't understood the finer points of the credit agreements they've taken out.
We think that is a really key part of preventing people getting into debt in the first place. It's helping people make informed decisions about the type of credit products that they're entering into. Historically, there's been a lot hidden in the small print, much of which either isn't read or isn't understood.
But the industry trade bodies say huge strides have been made in making the terms and conditions clearer.
Small print now is much longer than it was, and there's no way around it. There is lots of it. But if you look at how terms and conditions were couched 20, 30 years ago, they're very different now. They are much plainer.
But back at the shopping centre, our test shows that customers don't seem to understand the small print. In fact, they're not even reading it.
Do you want to find out a little bit more about the card?
Take Edouard and Priscilla, who are enticed by the bold headlines on the advert.
I can sign you up now to get a bit more information if you want.
But do they read the small print? Minutes later, we catch up with them to find out.
OK, guys, you were attracted by that advert.
Sounds like a dream come true, really.
When it comes to the APR, that was 11. How did that feel to you?
It's quite good, yeah.
What's the truth behind that offer?
The APR of 11.9% is great if you can get it, but it's a typical APR, which means that only 66% of people who get accepted for that card would be offered that rate, so you could be offered a higher rate. And also it only applies to purchasers. If you use the card to transfer a debt over from another card for the balance transfer offer, the interest rate on that is 34.9%. So that's very high.
Would you be prepared to pay that, 34.9%?
Never yet.
Our 34.9% interest rate was there in the leaflet Edward and Priscilla got, but they didn't even look at it. And there are credit cards out there where you could find yourself paying even more.
The small print is very small.
You know, you want to just make yourself to believe, you know, it's a bargain.
I mean, this card shows exactly why you have to look at the small print, because it could be a great card if you know and understand all the different features about it.
Of the 30 people who signed up, only 2 questioned the small print. Whilst the credit card industry say they have a responsibility to make things clear, they also say it's up to customers to make sure they read and understand the small print.
You've been given a product, you need to read the information. Now, I know that lots of us don't, and it is quite tedious stuff, but there's no way getting around it. You've got to read the small print.
But shouldn't the lenders do more to make things clear?
It's not in a lender's interest to be having an arrangement with the customer when they don't understand the product they're using. So we are consistently looking at how to improve the presentation, how to make it more accessible.
But until they do make things clearer, the message is, buyer beware.
So take note, and if you want more details of the real-life catches we included in our Money Watch card, go to our website, bbc.co.uk/moneywatch. So we've seen how easy it is to run up credit card debts, but how much do we all owe? If we add together the mortgages, the credit card debts, the overdrafts, the secured loans, the unsecured loans, the whole lot, at the end of 2004, look at this, we owed a total of £1 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's £1 million. But look what happens next. Our debts rise, and they continue to rise. Look at them, rising all the way up to here, the point at which the credit crunch hits. What happens next? Well, they go on rising, more slowly now, but they do go on rising all the way to here, to the spring of this year, when we in Britain owed a total of, wait for it, £1.46 trillion. So how capable are we of dealing with our debts, of coping with our finances? Well, I've got something else to show you. This is a map of the country showing those areas best and least able to cope with their debts and other finances. It's known as an economic resilience map. Now, we've coloured it like a traffic light, shows shades of red, show areas that aren't financially resilient, all the way through yellow to green, those areas best able to cope financially. And if you look, areas of the southeast, as you'd expect, are there in green, showing they're well able to cope financially. Where I am now, Liverpool, up there, it's red, one of the least able to cope financially areas of the country. Merthyr Tydfil is another, Middlesbrough in the northeast is another, and Nottingham's another. Sophie.
Thanks, Justin. So Liverpool is one of the cities most troubled by debt in the UK. Our money-saving expert, Martin Lewis, joins me, and also some people who are themselves in debt. 2 of you are working, newly employed. Ted, you're now retired.
Yep.
How much debt are you in?
£3.5 grand.
£3,500
Yep.
on credit cards?
Yes.
And how difficult is it for you to pay that back?
Not now, but it was at times. It was. So we just live within my means now, although we pay it back £50 a week. That's it.
£50 a week. What about you, Jonathan?
My total debt's probably around about 60,000.
£60,000?
Yeah,
How old are you?
25.
25, and you've got 60 grand debt. Sam, what about you?
Student loan aside, about 2,900, 2,000 overdraft, and then 2 credit cards, one with 500, one with about 380. And the worrying thing is the credit cards, I sorted out a minimum repayment about 3-4 years ago and haven't touched them since. don't think about them.
So can I just jump in? Give me your hand.
Grab the man.
Minimum repayments, absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
If you were to pay minimum repayments on a credit card at 17.9% interest, right, which, are yours higher than that?
29.5.
Minimum repayment, 17.9% interest, £3,000. It would take you 43 years to repay if you had £3,000 as an interest cost of £6,100. You've just left being a student, you'd be retired by the time you finish paying it off. You have to pay more off. Focus on paying the highest interest rate card off. That is a really dangerous scenario. I feel like your grandfather telling you, but I'm really serious. That wrist slap, I hope it hurt if I did it on my own one, because you need to remember that.
What about our £60,000 in debt trainee solicitor then? Should he be worried?
Well, I'm very worried about that. There's two things that I would define as debt crisis. The first, you can't meet your minimum repayments. Is that you?
Yeah, on one of my loans. Yeah.
Right, well, if you can't meet on anything and you've got to pay your rent and you've got to pay your bills, debt crisis. The second, I would say, is if your debts are bigger than a year's after-tax income, then debt crisis. So let's take this. You've got 60,000. Take off your student loan. How much?
About 25, I'd say.
That's student loans 25,
yes.
So that leaves us 35,000. How much of the rest is at subsidised interest rates because it was professional studies or something like that?
About 15 to 18 professional studies.
So we take that down. You're still 20 grand in debt. How much are you earning?
17.
Right. What you need to do, and this is really important, if you're in debt crisis, there are some good non-profit free debt counselling agencies. Consumer Credit Counselling Service, National Debt Line, Citizens Advice Bureau. They won't charge you a penny. They will start to help you deal with your debts. I would really like you to go and see one of those.
What about Ted? £50 a week?
Well, you see, I was just doing the maths. If he's now paying off £50 a week, your debt's £3,500. Even with bad interest rates, you'll be clear in 2 years, so I'm not so worried about you. Just pay off as much as you can and get them cleared. So that's some good news.
OK, Martin, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Now, what if your debt is really serious? You can't manage the repayments and you feel like you're drowning. Well, there is a way to survive, as Andy Verity has been finding out.
Matt Dyer's greatest passion is his motorbike. But he stands to lose it because he's so heavily in debt.
It's my fault, really. I was helping the children out. I kept paying their deposits for their flats, their houses. Sometimes they get into debt, and I paid their debts. And it just snowballed from there.
Matt and his wife aren't alone. When debts get out of control, it's stressful enough. But when you start trying to sort them out, how you do it is crucial. The wrong choice can make matters worse.
Is it Matt?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'm Andy.
How do you do?
Yeah, nice to see you.
It was silly. It was very silly, because it's so easy to get in debt.
How much would you borrow at a time, say?
Oh, it was only a couple of hundred at the time. And then the bills started to mount, and it just snowballed.
An accident at work meant Matt didn't have enough money to live on, so he borrowed to help support his wife and 5 children.
Live here today, the one, the only, the amazing Wall of...
But unable to keep up with the repayments, his problems spiralled out of control. With debts of £54,000, the creditors were soon on his back.
We was getting no sleep. They were phoning up every day. We didn't know who to turn to. Then this one company phoned us up.
Out the blue?
Yeah, out the blue. And they says, don't worry, Mr. Dyer, we'll come down and see you. We'll sort this out. We thought, oh, it's Christmas. We actually had some sleep.
Matt had signed up for a debt management plan. The company would work out how much he could afford to repay each month. Then he'd give them the money and they would pay his creditors for him.
What did they tell you about how long it would take to repay the debt?
I had to pay until I was 78.
What?
Yeah, 78.
And you call that sorting it out?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
In the first 6 months, Matt paid more than £2,000 into the plan, but it turns out that that money wasn't used to repay his debts. Instead of that, it went on fees to the debt management company.
Now, what Matt went for is a debt management plan where you pay off your debts in full, but they're not regulated, and they can last indefinitely. He could have gone instead for an individual voluntary arrangement where you agree to pay off a portion of your debts, and after 5 years, the rest is written off. Or he could have gone for option 3, where after a year you could have all your debts wiped out. Bankruptcy.
Peter Sargent is one of the country's leading insolvency experts. So what would he have advised?
I've met a borrower, Matt Dyer, modest income, lives in rented accommodation, debts of 55 grand. What would your advice be to someone like that?
I'd tell him to go bankrupt.
Really, no doubt about it?
No doubt about it, because in that chap's situation, it would probably take forever for him to be able to repay those debts, and it would be unfair for him to be stuck in an arrangement for probably the rest of his life.
Given that bankruptcy can make sense for people in Matt's situation, why don't the debt management companies advise more heavily indebted people to do it? One reason could be that those same debt management companies collect a fee for setting up one of their plans. For advising you to go bankrupt, they don't collect a penny.
Like many people, Matt resisted the idea of going bankrupt because to him it sounded too much like giving up. Giving up his possessions, his credit rating, and most importantly, his self-respect.
I could have gone bankrupt, so I've been told. But we said no, and that's the way we've always been. If I owe somebody something, I pay it back.
Does bankruptcy really mean you have to hang your head in shame? The actor Christopher Biggins doesn't think so. He wrote off £50,000 worth of debts in his own bankruptcy. He feels he's lived through a revolution in attitudes.
My father suffered a bankruptcy many years before mine, and I was very sad because my father was a very proud man and he didn't want to do it, but he had to. I think nowadays, and certainly when I had my bankruptcy, it wasn't so much shame, it was a means to an end.
How did the bankruptcy affect your ways of dealing with money, of managing it?
What it did for me, it was made me aware of money, and it made me aware of how to deal with the money. It changed me. It changed my whole approach to money. I now only have one credit card.
The other fear is that if you go bankrupt, your credit rating will be so damaged that you'll never be able to borrow again.
You might think going bankrupt is going to leave a permanent stain on your credit record, but actually it gets wiped clean after 6 years. With a debt management plan, it could take a lot longer than that. And whether you agree with it or not, going bankrupt has never been easier. And now the government's considering changing it, so you don't even have to go to court.
But it's not just the loss of self-respect or even a damaged credit rating that puts people off bankruptcy. It's something far more immediate. The worry that everything you own might be seized.
The fear, if the bailiffs get called in, is that you're going to lose everything.
Yeah.
Is that true?
No, absolutely not. And there's various legislations that protect certain items, i.e. you should be left with suitable items to carry on living. A cooker, a washing machine, generally white goods and stuff like that. They wouldn't take your bedding. They wouldn't take your clothes.
The bailiffs can seize treasured possessions, and they will if they think they're worth trying to sell. But the modest amounts raised in an auction won't go far to repay the people you owe money to.
It's other small businesses that they may owe money to, individuals, your plumber, could be anyone. I mean, that's the real impact, that once one person goes bankrupt, there's no more spiral going on behind them.
Some people might say going bankrupt is just a way for irresponsible borrowers to get out of their debts too easily.
People don't go bankrupt as a lifestyle choice. People only go bankrupt when they're in a desperate situation, when any other alternative course of action would not work for them.
In the last few months, Matt started to rethink what he should do.
I've been to see some people who really know about the business, and they say, for people in your situation, the best option might be to go bankrupt. What do you think about that?
I think they're right.
So, can you hope to keep your bike?
That is going.
Just take your time.
The fear is that if bankruptcy is too easy, borrowers will just go bust and then get into trouble all over again. But Matt is determined that that won't happen to him.
I don't intend borrowing money again. Never. If we haven't got it, we'll save up for it.
I'm joined again by Paul Lewis. A terrible situation that Matt finds himself in, but a lot of people think nowadays that declaring yourself bankrupt is actually too easy.
Well, it's quite easy to go bankrupt, and after a year or so your debts are probably sorted out. But for 6 years you're not going to be able to get credit, not a credit card, very rarely be able to get an ordinary current account. So it can be very difficult to manage your life for the 6 years after you're bankrupt.
But after 6 years, your slate is literally wiped clean. You can start again, as it were.
Yes, you can, but don't forget, if you do go bankrupt and you own your own home or own a big chunk of it, then you will lose that as part of the bankruptcy deal. So it's a much better deal for people like Matt, who are renting, rather than for people who own their home.
Who are the best people to get advice from?
Well, the problem with a debt management company such as Matt went to is they make their money out of managing your debt, so they're much less likely to suggest bankruptcy if that's the right course for you. The debt charities are more likely to look objectively at all the options, and if bankruptcy is the right course, they will advise you how to do it and, of course, what the pitfalls are.
But bankruptcy should not be taken lightly, should it? It's really a last resort.
Well, it is. It's the kind of ejector seat. It might save your financial life, but don't forget, there is a moral point to this. If you go bankrupt, all those people who've lent you money, who you owe money to, are not going to get their money back. And there are many people, and I think Matt was one, who are a bit uncomfortable with that. So it's an emergency process.
Paul Lewis, thank you.
Of course, one way to stop getting into debt, in fact, to avoid getting into any trouble with spending and borrowing, would be to give up money altogether. But is that really possible? Well, I've been to meet some people who've been trying to do just that, and for one of them, it's become a way of life. The new government's had quite a bit to say about saving money in the last couple of months, but the man I'm going to go and see could teach the new Chancellor a thing or two about how to manage a budget. He's cut his spending not by 1%, not by 2%, not by 5%. He's cut it by 100%.
Mark Boyle has been living without cash for over 18 months. No money means no home comforts and an ingenious approach to personal hygiene.
So how do you deal with stuff like, I don't know, brushing your teeth, toothpaste, stuff like that?
Yeah, well, for toothpaste, I use the main ingredient is a thing called cuttlefish bone, which washes up on most shores around the UK. And with that, I mix wild fennel seeds, which I just grind up. And
show us your teeth. Yeah, they look all right. There's some dodgy ones at the back.
that's from all my years of eating too many sweets and drinking too much beer.
To make his cash-free lifestyle possible, Mark's had to do a swap. His labour on the farm in exchange for a field to live in and all the tea he can drink.
So you're going to make me a cup of tea, yeah?
Yeah, this is where I get my tea from. Probably about 1 metre from...
It's close to the supermarket, isn't it?
And there's no queues here either.
So what do you do? You just pick them?
Pick probably about 6.
Ow!
Oh, city hands.
Yeah, city hands. Is this going to be as tasty as my builders that I have at home?
It's probably going to be 10 times tastier.
So how hard has it been living without any money at all?
I think in the first 2 months I found it really difficult, actually. Everything seemed to take so much longer. But I found that after the first 2 months that once I had established routines and actually got to really build relationships with people and the local environment, that I found myself that it actually just became second nature.
Most of us would think twice before giving up cash and the creature comforts it provides. But Mark believes it's the best decision he ever made.
We always think of what we lose in the process, but actually there's so much more to gain. You know, and the sense of freedom and liberation that I've felt over the last 18 months has been as far outweighed the fact that there's the odd thing I can't do.
Let me try this. It's much better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
That really is much better than I thought it would be.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. And
a bit of milk and sugar and be onto something.
By swapping 1 day a week of his labour, Mark has managed to kickstart a cash-free lifestyle. But for those of us who don't want to live in a field, can we learn something from the way that Mark lives? In fact, there are a growing number of people who are using the internet to arrange cash-free swaps, saving money on everything from gardening to mortgage advice.
This is just something that I looked up, similar to Facebook, just something online that I heard about, and I went on, and you can see you just set up a profile of yourself and then just search different skills that you might want to swap with.
And what appealed to you?
I'm very interested in learning how to cook or to bake cakes. My cooking skills aren't up to scratch, so just basically want to swap a skill, my skill, to learn.
Swaps can be a way of getting those little extras and still saving yourself a bit of cash. But do be careful. If the taxman thinks you're doing anything other than just a favour for a friend, you could end up with an unexpected bill.
There is a tax issue. Obviously, I wouldn't be going into it to sell any cakes or anything like that. It's just basically like a hobby to just learn.
So as far as the taxman's concerned, it's like a favour for a
it's a favour for it's a favour for a favour.
Charlene is doing her swap with Rosie Kelly. Rosie's been swapping for 2 years. It's allowed her to try out new things without handing over any hard cash.
So have you done many of these swaps?
Yeah, I've done quite a few. I've done one with my beautician. So I teach her nephew English, and she gives me beauty treatments. I've had treatments I didn't know existed, you know, I've had extensions on my eyelashes. That's me. I had to teach quite a few lessons for that, though. So you roll it one way, then turn it right. Tiny bit more. Yeah, good. Just roll it one way.
Swapping is all about working out a fair exchange of time and skills. In this case, an hour of baking for an hour of hairdressing.
Oh my God, they're lovely.
Like it?
Yeah, I love it, yeah. I can actually see the blue of my eyes now. Yeah.
Swapping could be a way to save yourself quite a bit of cash. But there's also something appealing about the idea of just packing it all in and giving up the stresses of money for good.
I'll tell you what, Mark, this isn't so bad, is it? I could get used to a bit of this.
Yeah, well, you probably haven't seen my swimming pool yet, have you?
I haven't got my trunks.
Your trunks, you silly boys.
Well, skinny dipping. I can't quite believe you were doing that, Justin.
Sophie, I can't believe that I did that. Unfortunately, that's almost all we've got time for here in Liverpool. But before we go, there's just time for a last word from Linda and Paul. Now, we've been talking about spending it. What's the key thought people should take away? Linda.
They've got to make sure that they can afford it, because a lot of our spending over the last few years was based on cheap credit, and that was unsustainable and unlikely to be the case in the future. So my advice is to take advantage of the low interest rates and pay down your debts if you can.
Pay down your debts, Paul?
Absolutely. I think that's excellent advice. And don't take on new debt, because the temptation is you want something, you go out, get out the credit card or take out a loan. Don't do that, because interest rates are going to go up, your income may go down, it will be harder to pay it off.
OK, Paul, Linda, thank you very much. Now, next week, we're in London, the savings and investment capital of Europe. And we'll be asking if it's possible to hold on to just a bit more of our income.
Savers are losing billions.
The savings issue in the UK is nothing short of an absolute disgrace.
But is there any hope?
You make your savings work for you rather than you working for your savings.
Property on a knife edge.
You can't go wrong with bricks and mortar is my motto.
Prices in Kensington have gone down. Prices in Cheshire have gone down.
But they've all gone down, but they've all started to come back up.
And treasure hunting, we go in search of the best investment.
From all of us here in Liverpool, goodbye.
Bye-bye.